Hello, my name is Andres Roque,
And I'm Cian McFarlane.
and we're going to be explaining the story of Winnie the Pooh as compared with Freud and Jung's theories. To begin, Winnie the Pooh is written by A. Mill. It's a story about a father who's reading these stories about the child's stuffed animals and how they become alive and interact with him. The child is called Christopher Robin, and the main character in the story is Winnie the Pooh, who's a bear. We see that he goes on adventures and has fun with his friends throughout the story. Freud's theory is centered around unconscious drives, which is called the libido. So the libido is like the sexual energy that motivates people to keep going. The three different groupings that he represented were the id, ego, and the superego. The id is that libido or sexual energy. The superego is the moralistic things that we inherit from our parents. We feel very guilty if this part of our personality is very strong. And lastly, the ego mediates between the id and the superego. It is able to organize our lives and motivates us to go through it. So in the story, the id is represented by Winnie the Pooh because of his wanting and desires for the honey. The honey is his sexual desire, and he really wants to pursue it. We even see in one story that he has a very difficult time of repressing his desires when he gets stuck in a cave and he has to stop eating honey for a week to lose weight. The ego is represented by Christopher Robin. He has a realistic personality. He's very organized. He's always mediating between Winnie the Pooh and the other characters as they go along on their adventures. And lastly, the superego is represented by the rabbit. The rabbit is a very obsessive person. He wants everything in order. Whenever people are planning to do things, he needs to have things his way. He's always trying to make people feel guilty if they don't do his way of doing things. Freud had these psychosexual stages where everyone goes through from the age of 0 all the way to adulthood. It goes through oral, anal, phallic, latency, and genital. And if a person becomes conflicted in one of these areas, they will become very fixated on that stage. So in the story, the oral stage is represented by Winnie the Pooh because he's obsessed with honey. He always needs to have it in his mouth, and he's always fixated on that trait. He's very optimistic and dependable, which is a trait of people who are obsessed with the oral stage. The anal stage is represented by the rabbit because of his obsession of having everything in order. He's very, very, very obsessed and OCD about things, and Eeyore as well. His tail is always falling off, and he's obsessed with keeping it back on, so it's a very obsession with the anal stage. And lastly, the phallic stage is represented by Tigger, because he's always jumping around with his tail, and in Freudian psychology, the tail would be considered the penis, and since it's a kid's book, they didn't really talk about his sexual drive, but his hyperactivity is shown through his jumping around with his tail.
Jung's theory of collective unconscious. In Jung's theory, everyone inherits from their predecessors certain structures of ideas. Ideas are a form of archetypes. There are 8 archetypes from Jung's theory of collective unconscious. The 8 archetypes, there are 5 that we chose to represent 5 characters in Winnie the Pooh. The hero, the spiritual father, the child, the trickster, and the mother. Jung's ego. Ego, according to Jung, ego is a part of the personality but is not the center of the personality. Jung explained this as a difference from Freud's psychosexual stages. The Jung's archetype. Archetypes are psychic instincts that predisposes us to experience the world in certain universal human ways. The hero. Piglet represents the hero because he is relatively weak and he struggles to become an individual and separates regressive ties to the mother. The spiritual father. The spiritual father is an owl. This character is associated with the spirituality because of its instinctive qualities. During the story, he always has stories to tell and advices to share with the other characters. The trickster. Tigger is a trickster because he disrupts an order that was once peaceful. The shadow. Eeyore is a shadow because he represents the aspects of our personality that are rejected from the consciousness. He represents shadow because he is a great individual, but his true personality is repressed by the id impulses. Kanga. Kanga is the mother because she represents the ancestral qualities of raising and ensuring the safety of the young ones. Kanga represents the mother because she is very overprotective of her young son Rue.
In all, the differences is that the ego in Freud's theory is that the person is obsessed with sexual desires, but the ego is not the center of everything.
It's more of the self.
Exactly.